With Panasonic choosing Kansas over Oklahoma for its new car battery manufacturing facility, it made us wonder, is Oklahoma competitive in luring new businesses to our state? And are several new laws passed in the last session helping or hurting that cause? That's the topic of this week's in-depth conversation with moderator Susan Godot and her panel of guests. Susan?
All right, thank you, Rich. Yes, it's the economy, correct? And that's certainly a statement that pertains to Oklahoma right now. I'd like to introduce our two panelists with you. We have Chad Warmington, who is the president and CEO of the State Chamber of Oklahoma. And then we have Roy Williams, who is the president and CEO of the Greater Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce. Thank you both for being with us.
You bet.
Thank you, Susan. Pleasure being here.
I'm going to start with you, Chad, and everyone's talking about the Panasonic deal. I'd like to get your take on the Panasonic deal, and then I'm going to come to you, Roy, and get yours.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think the Panasonic opportunity was and still is a huge opportunity for Oklahoma. It's fun to finally be able to talk about Panasonic as opposed to Project Ocean, which we've all been referring to it for the last year. But it was a transformational opportunity to get a high-skilled manufacturing facility of that scale in Oklahoma. Those don't come around very often, and so I'd say that Oklahoma put its best foot forward. We didn't get the first facility. It's looking like we won't get the first facility. There's always been talk of two potential facilities, and so hopefully all the hard work that we put into that recruitment effort isn't gone in vain, and maybe we will be eligible to get the second facility if they build one.
So, Roy, I know you're focused on Oklahoma City, but these have ripple effects throughout the state, correct?
Oh, they do, yeah. Anything of this kind of size, no matter where it locates within Oklahoma, is good for the state as a whole in just many, many different reasons, because there's always suppliers. There's always other, talent needs, et cetera. So, yeah, it would be a big win for Oklahoma should we be able to get, one of these kinds of significant industry presence.
So, Roy, I want to ask you, what kind of intangibles does Oklahoma have to offer? And then I do want to ask you this. As you look at recruitment, not of Panasonic, but other businesses, are the state's social laws hampering the Oklahoma's ability to attract new business? And by social laws, I mean like the very controversial national spotlight abortion measures being taken in the state.
I mean, to be clear, I had no involvement in this project. It was in Northeast, so I wasn't involved in any of the negotiations of any of it. So there's a lot about this project I don't know anything about.
Okay.
But what I do know, I've been in this business for decades. And you don't win everything, but you try to learn from losses. And, this is a highly competitive world of trying to get this kind of capital investment and jobs. So, you're going to lose. You're going to lose a whole lot more than you win, but that doesn't stop you from trying. To your other question, something that plays big in all of these kinds of decisions is image. Is how do people perceive this location? I mean, we saw here in Oklahoma City, decades ago, when we were trying to get major facilities here, that image is what was causing a big part of our losses. That if a CEO can't imagine their employees living in your state or in your town, they're certainly not going to select you. And that was a challenge we faced 34 years ago. So that's a common thing, is what kind of image are we portraying out there to the nation and the world? And the more controversial projects or legislation or social things that you take action on, the more you eliminate a certain portion of people who might be interested. So, yeah, those always play into it.
So it's a tough balancing act, right, Chad? I mean, so we talked about image, you talked about intangibles, we talked about social issues. It's hard to mix all that together and still stay attractive, or can we?
Yeah, no, I think it is. But I also think at the end of the day, the legislature is going to be real responsive to the desires of their constituents on those social issues. So, I don't think you have a legislature that's gone rogue and somehow is pushing social issues that the vast majority of Oklahomans don't want. So that being said, I think to Roy's point, companies are going to make an evaluation of whether they want to be here if that's the type of social policies that are going to be pushed, and they're going to have to make those decisions that's in the best interest of them and their shareholders and their employees. But I don't think you can necessarily fault legislators for pushing policies that they think are in the best interest of the state or that their constituents want. Certainly, there needs to be a consideration given, and I think that's what Roy's saying is they need to factor that into the decision of whether to push some of those policies. But at the end of the day, they're not going to do things that their constituents don't want, or they won't be coming back to the legislature.
So we've come a long way since Roy mentioned 34 years ago to where we are now in Oklahoma. And I think well of Oklahoma, but this is my home and I live here. What are you guys hearing is the current image of the state? And Roy, I know that affects you in Oklahoma City. And the image of Oklahoma City, is it different than the image of the state entire, Roy?
Yeah, I do think the different places within the state do have different images that they portray outside of the area. You know, one of the things that changed our image here in Oklahoma City more than anything was an NBA franchise. I mean, all of a sudden you're in an elite league that you weren't in. So, you know, there's attributes all across the state that you can hold up and say, you know, these are really extremely positive. These really have helped us. But, you know, you have to just continually stay on top of that. You know, sometimes people think that economic development is all about sales. Well, that's half of it. The other half is what you call product development. You got to have a product you can sell. And so you have to continually work on that product to make it competitive.
So Chad, what comes into product development? And maybe I'm off course here and thinking, is it workforce training? Is it raw materials that are available here? Explain that for us.
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think Roy's absolutely right. And that's what the legislature and our job, you know, particularly the state chamber, we're focused on. Are we putting our best foot forward? Are we developing the programs? Are we developing those intangibles that we need? So do we have the right business incentives? Do we have the right tax structure in place? Do we have a workforce system that can supply the needs of the companies that Roy and others are trying to recruit? And I think Oklahoma is doing a much better job of that recently in terms of trying to be understanding of what is the demand out there. And so to Roy's point exactly, if we're not supplying the needed skills and the needed attributes that these companies want, they're not coming here regardless of the other things that we do. And so, again, that's why, you know, we work with Roy and his team to make sure that those incentives, those intangibles, the workforce issues, the education issues, career tax, you name it, that Oklahoma is doing the things that it needs to do in order to remain attractive to industry to move here. And then not just move here, new industry, grow the existing industry that we have as well.
And just to add to that too, I mean, we could go on and on and on, but there's infrastructure issues, there's telecommunication issues, there's logistics issues, you know, there's supplier issues. I mean, it goes on and on and on. There's not 5 magic bullets here. You know, to make your product better and more reliable to your customer, there's a lot of different factors. And the same is true for us trying to create that product here in Oklahoma.
So this is not a sprint, it's a marathon, is what I'm hearing, but it's one we've been running for 34 years, Roy. I don't know, how much farther do you think we have to run?
Yeah, it's not a marathon, it's a never-ending race.
That's right.
Oh my goodness, yeah.
You know, and you know, it's funny, Roy and I were on a call the other day and we talked about a lot of states would like to say that they're business friendly or they're, you know, other things, but really at the end of the day is, are we ready to move now is what we kind of kicked around on this call. We're talking about, are you business ready now? Meaning a lot of these companies want to make decisions. They want to get here. They want to know that they can hit the ground running and we can help them get up and get ramped up and running quickly. And so not only do we have to have all those things prepared, then we have to be prepared to move quickly once they decide to move too. They don't want to have a bunch of delays in terms of zoning and permitting and regulatory issues. They want it to be very business friendly, but they want it to be business ready now. And that's the way Oklahoma's got to get itself postured if we're going to be able to compete for these types of projects.
All right, either one of you can answer this question. Does the state have enough incubator and accelerator programs to motivate businesses?
You know, I think that is evolving rather quickly. If you would ask that question 5 or 10 years ago, I would have said no. But I think now, you know, we're reacting to the market, we're reacting to entrepreneurs, and a lot of communities across the state are really focusing on startup companies and helping those startup companies accelerate. So, you know, I think in all the metro areas, there's a number of different programs that do this. And in rural Oklahoma, there's less resources, but there's still a lot of efforts going on in career techs as well as in communities. So I think we're getting there. We're not where we need to be yet, but I think we're getting really good traction.
We've done so many stories on career tech institutions in the state, seeing the growth in enrollment, and really there's good money to be made in those sectors. Chad, I want to come to you next and talk about Canoe. So we talked about Panasonic at the start. Let's talk about Canoe. They're still building in Oklahoma. What does a company like that do for the state, and how do you feel about Canoe?
Yeah, well, Canoe's a fantastic company. They're a member company of the state chamber. And I think, what Canoe actually helped us do was even pursue the opportunity for Panasonic. We had Canoe first, and their CEO, Tony, and the governor have hit it off really well. And I think the notion that Canoe would choose to locate at the prior Mid-America Industrial Park kind of put us on the radar for Panasonic and other projects. So I think Canoe is going to be kind of a bellwether for us of maybe taking another look at Oklahoma. And I think all of this was really followed upon the interest that we got from Tesla in the last time that they were considering putting a facility. They ended up going to Austin, but we were in the game and on the map. And if you have Elon Musk sitting at the Mid-America Industrial Park under tent with the governor talking about what could have been Tesla there, I think we learned a lot of lessons, which led us to Canoe, which led us to being able to in competition with Panasonic. Because I think we're getting better. To Roy's point, we're getting all these exercises are actually helping us be more prepared for the next big opportunity. And so those are all good things for Oklahoma.
All right, we've talked a lot. We've said the word incentives a lot. And as our time begins to wind down, we still get a couple more questions in, but I do want to make sure we explain what incentives are. When people hear that the state was offering $700 million in incentives to Panasonic, it's not that the state was going to give Panasonic $700 million in cash. And I'll let either one of you explain what incentives are that we've been talking about. How does that work with businesses?
Chad, you can begin and I'll be happy to add on.
Sure. Well, and I think, and Roy's an expert on what the incentives that are existing incentives that are on the books. What we did for Canoe and and more specifically for Panasonic was what they call more of a mega project incentive. It's when you've got, more than 1,000 jobs and $1 billion of investment. It kind of kicks you up in this next tier category that you really have to have a attractive package to do that. And so what Oklahoma did, and I'll give the legislature credit, all the incentives that they offered were contingent upon those dollars being spent by the private company before the incentives would be paid. So there wasn't a give them money and hope they come. It was if they come and spend those dollars, then the incentives would kick in. And a lot of it was, ad valorem rebates. There was workforce training. There was a bunch of things that they were going to do, but there had to be investments made by the company first before those dollars would be rebated back to the company. And so I think that's a really good tweak in terms of not necessarily offering up a bunch of cash and then hoping it works out. We were really incentivizing them to make that investment here and we would rebate it. And Roy can get into a lot of the details of the existing incentives that are on the books, maybe for even smaller projects as well.
Well, I think the main point is that Oklahoma has always taken the approach of performance incentives, meaning they're after the company performs that they get them. A lot of our competitors don't do that. And so they'll give incentives up front and then the company doesn't perform and then they get into clawbacks and lawsuits and all that kind of stuff. But when you have performance-based incentives, you never get into that because you don't get a check until you have fulfilled the promise that you made as it relates to either investment, number of jobs, payroll, et cetera.
Gentlemen, such great information. We're running out of time. I would like to get your final words for the people of Oklahoma who are very concerned about the economy right now. Roy, I'll start with you.
Yeah, I think a lot of people tend to believe that the economic development business is nothing but a sales business, that, whoever's the best salesperson wins. And they really forget about this whole issue that I stated earlier about the importance of product development as well as product sales. And they forget that just like in their own business, they have to constantly, be doing R&D. They got to constantly be looking at their product and seeing how do we improve it. And I think a lot of community leaders oftentimes just don't think that way. They tend to think their community is a great place already, and they really don't need to do anything other than they need a successful salesperson to do that. And unfortunately, that's just not true. The product has to sell itself, not a great salesperson. And so you really need to think long and hard about what kind of investments do you need to make in your product, in your community, that really turns it into something somebody really wants. Then you can sell it.
Chad?
Well, I kind of echo exactly what Roy's saying, and then also say it takes good leadership, from a state to get prepared for that. And I think we in Oklahoma are really lucky to have a Roy Williams and a Mike Neal and Dave Stewart over at Mid-America Industrial Park and Oklahoma Commerce Department. We've got people who really care about Oklahoma, who want to grow it for the right reasons, who want companies that are going to come into Oklahoma and be accretive to our economy, our culture, and our people. And so we've got a whole group of people whose job it is to grow Oklahoma and grow Oklahoma in the right way. And I think they should rest assured that we've got a governor and a legislature who are really focused on growing the economy of Oklahoma. And that benefits everyone. I mean, jobs and employment, good benefits that come with that can really change family trees. And so recruiting the right businesses to Oklahoma who want to be here for the right reasons, and we can give them the right incentives. We got a whole good group of people working on that. And I think they should walk away from this interview knowing that there's a team of people really trying hard to make Oklahoma even better than it is today.
Great. I want to thank you both for your time. Chad Warmington, State Chamber of Commerce, Roy Williams, Oklahoma City Chamber of Commerce. Thank you for your insights.
You bet.
Thank you, Susan.